Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to another live at the Waterhole with Africa. Thank you very, very much for joining us. We will be hoping for some wonderful sightings over the coming 2 hours as we enjoy all of the different feeds from a variety of places in Africa and enjoying some of the amazing wildlife. We've started out at Naledi Dam in Olifants West Game Reserve, but while we wait for something other than that lonely impala sheltering in the shade at the back there, introduce myself. My name is Ben Coley. I'll be looking after you for the next 2 hours, and we and I would very much love to hear from you. So if you have any questions, comments, anything you'd like to ask me about with regards to what we're seeing or nature and things in general, please do so. You can do that by going to our website and registering. You can follow along on YouTube, and of course, you can use X with the hashtag Wild Earth. So it would be great to hear from you. So please do get in touch. I hope you're all having a lovely day. It's been a little while since I have been on. You'll have to excuse me if I sound a little different. I'm a little bit bunged up today, but hopefully that won't get in the way. Um, but yeah, not much at the moment at Naledi, often a site of much elephant interactions. And hopefully we'll have some luck as we move forward in the day. But you can see the water's beginning to dry up a little bit, cracked mud at the edges. Coming into winter, of course, in the southern hemisphere, you can see the brown grass in the background. Okay, I think we are going to try our luck up at Tau, their waterhole in Madikwe, and see if there's some activity there. We've got a little warthog. So, for those of you who have not visited this location before, this is Tau Game Lodge up in the northwestern part of South Africa in Madikwe Game Reserve, and Tau Lodge is also in the very northwestern corner of Madikwe. It's a beautiful spot. I've been there a couple of times, and this waterhole always has some activity, he says, hopefully. But it does look as if we've got a warthog here having a good scratch in the mud, taking advantage of this cooling elixir and yeah, scratching the parts that other warthogs cannot reach. It looks like a female warthog. And we can see that because of the lack of the second set of warts halfway down the snout. You can see the ones under the eyes. Males have a second set sort of halfway between the eyes and the tusks. But we're going to have a quick look at the weather and see what's happening for the next couple of hours at our different locations, and then we will be back with our warthog. So as you can see, despite coming into winter, the temperatures across most of South Africa are still very, very high, up at around about 29, 30 degrees there in Madikwe, and a perfect opportunity in the middle of the day with less predators moving around in the heat of the day for a warthog to come down and enjoy the spoils of one of these little mud baths there. Potentially that little puddle was caused by an elephant's footprint or something, which the warthogs have then come down and utilized and created a little pool from which to scratch everything. You can see her there just tossing over the mud, possibly exposing some of that nice soft mud on the inside. She's going to have a good rub around in there. Great way to keep cool in the African sunlight and have a good scratch, as I say. Kim Fastidio, you're joining us from the Philippines. Wonderful to have people from far and wide. 6:30 p.m. on Saturday for you. Well, it is 12:30 p.m. in Madikwe, or just gone. There's a slight little difference in the time difference, certainly from where you are. Of course, now we're coming into winter. By 6:30 p.m. in South Africa, it's pretty much dark. Sunset about 5:30 this time of year. No daylight savings in South Africa to worry about. Makes life a little bit less complicated. No, it seems that's it for our water. Melinda 67, you're saying welcome back to me. Well, thank you very much. Ah, that's why the warthog is vacated. Timeshare at the waterhole. It's lovely to be back, Melinda. Thank you very much for your kind words. And Lenny as well. Thank you very much for saying hi. Great to hear from you too. Questo TV, is there a crocodile in the waterhole? Well, there often is at Tower Lodge. Whether or not we will see it today, of course, I do not know. It is the joys of doing shows like this, and in fact, the joys of nature. I always say, I've said it before, and I will say it to the day that I die. The reason that I love this whole experience, be it digital or virtual that we're doing today, or when you're there in person, even better, is that no 2 days are ever the same. You don't know what you're going to see. You might see nothing, you might see everything, and you might see something completely random that you've never seen before. In fact, when I was doing guide training, I always used to say to the students there that if you don't see something new every single day, it's simply because you did not look hard enough. And speaking of crocodiles, I can't remember how long ago, probably about 3 weeks or so ago, when I was doing a live at the waterhole, we actually did see a crocodile eating a snake. We don't know where he got it from. We were unsure exactly what snake it was, possibly one of the cobras. But we saw a snake in this, a crocodile in this very waterhole eating a snake, which is something that I'd never seen before in about 17 years of doing this. So who knows what we might see today? Ah, yeah. Time for our close up. The elephant sneaking in, stage left. Well, it's not just the warthogs that are enjoying Tao. I say often get a lot of elephant bulls to drink, particularly during these hotter hours of the day. And this one's got a very good idea. In the shade, wading through the mud, and generally enjoying whatever it can find. So we know this would be a solitary bull, A, because he's solitary. Very rare that you'll see a cow, a female elephant, out on her own. They're very much normally part of that great social structure, the classic elephant herd, with all those social dynamics. Males often found either on their own or in little bachelor groups, and often in that scenario, one big old elephant bull who's sort of the king of the castle, he's the boss, and then a bunch of younger bulls that like to hang around with him just in order to sort of educate themselves, learn how to be an elephant, particularly when it comes to things like mating rights and the breeding game. I suppose you remembering that sighting of the crocodile feeding on the snake, yeah, it was pretty spectacular. As I said, we weren't even sure what it was. I assumed he'd caught a barbel or a catfish to begin with. But it turned out to be a snake. And they're saying this is more common in Australia. I would imagine so. A lot of crocodiles, of course, in Australia, and plenty of rather nasty snakes over there. A lot worse in terms of potentially dangerous snakes in Australia than there are here. Not somewhere I've ever been. I've spent some time in New Zealand, but never visited Australia. But something that perhaps one day I will see. Saltwater crocodiles and other crocodiles eating snakes in Australia. Nice. Jive Bunny, spa day. Yep, that warthog was indeed enjoying a spa day, and this elephant is doing sort of the same. It'd be fantastic if he decides to lie down and have a roll around in that cool mud. We'll have to see. But look how close he is to the fence. Amazing spectacle if you were staying at the lodge, which is just the other side of the fence there. And Danny Boy, good morning from London. Oh, good morning. So we've got Philippines, we've got London, and I'm sure many, many other countries represented today. But it is great that we can offer so many people from so many different places these amazing visuals.
This morning we did have some lions. Cedric's probably going to follow that one.
So we had another question from, excuse me, slight snivels today. Question from Questo TV asking me, what is my favorite snake to see? Oh, I love these questions, but I also hate them because they're so difficult. There is no right or wrong answer. I think there's two that spring to mind when you say that. The first one, just because I've only ever seen them very, very rarely, and they are amazing when you do see them, is some of those massive pythons. We are lucky enough very, very occasionally to see huge pythons in South Africa, the South African python. I have seen examples that are probably close to 4 meters in length and as thick as my thigh. And that is a very, very impressive animal to witness. capable of killing and swallowing full-grown impalas, amongst other things. So I think I've probably only ever seen that size python, I think maybe 4 or 5 times. I remember working down in KwaZulu-Natal at a lodge called Tunda many years ago and coming around the corner and finding a python crossing the road. And you couldn't see its head or its tail. The entire road was just taken up by this enormous body of the python. So probably about, I don't know, 6 inches thick, at least in terms of diameter. It was like one of those, we would call them sleeping policemen, those humps in the road to control your speed. So that was very, very impressive. And I've seen a couple in the Sabi Sands as well. But I think from a beauty perspective, the marbled tree snake is one of my favorites. That's a sort of a purpley color with almost like a cracked appearance with this sort of whitey, silvery skin color coming through. And those, I think, are really, really beautiful snakes. Quite arboreal, not unusual to find them up in the trees. And sometimes in your rooms as well, they can get in there. I had one in my tent when I was at eco training once, many years ago. But I always remember one run-in with a marbled tree snake that actually one of my students had. We were actually sitting around the campfire after the end of another long day. We'd done a couple of activities, we'd done lectures in between. Nobody had had a chance to go back and change. We were just enjoying sort of chatting about the encounters and the sightings that we'd had during the day. And one of our students put his hand into his pocket, but like the leg pocket, like you get on a pair of cargo pants. And I distinctly remember him saying, "I don't remember having a piece of rope in my pocket," and proceeded to pull out a marbled tree snake of around about probably 40 centimeters in length or so. And we can only assume that it had been in his pocket the entire day. Obviously, been quite happy there. The warmth from the body heat, the protection of being in a pocket. But yeah, he had a snake in his pocket for the entire day, and that's not a euphemism. Danny boy, I'm sorry you missed the snake and the croc. Maybe it'll happen again. Maybe it's like buses. You don't see one for ages, and then two come at once. But yeah, not something that I'd ever seen before. And it happened exactly here, pretty much where we're looking, just behind where that grey heron is. It was somewhere over there that we saw that very unusual encounter. But there are many, many beautiful snakes across Africa, of course. The eastern tiger snake, that's one I've only ever seen once or twice. That's a beautiful snake, sort of yellow and black, stripy one, which would make you think it's particularly dangerous with those what we call aposematic colorations. But it's not a particularly venomous snake. It's relatively docile. It does occur in the low felt, but I think I've only ever seen two in the wild. That's the thing with snakes. I take my sister, for example. Alex, if you're watching, I'm sorry. But I mean, she's petrified of snakes, and the thought of coming to visit in Africa fills her with great terror because there will be snakes everywhere. There are probably snakes, plenty of snakes around, but you very, very rarely actually see them. They don't have external ears like we do. They don't hear us coming, but they sense our vibrations, and 9 times out of 10, they move off before you even know that they are there. The best advice when it comes to snakes, of course, is leave them alone. And again, 99 times out of 100, you will be absolutely fine. An overwhelming majority, up in the high 90% worth of bites happen to people either trying to pick up snakes or trying to catch snakes or kill them. So if you just leave the snake alone, make sure it's got an escape route, and it will almost always take that escape route. So we've got a nice couple of white feet at the front, a little bit of body paint. There's calcium-rich soil in this area. Giant bunny, yeah, it was quite a scary one. It was and an experience that he will never forget. Certainly, I cannot remember his name, unfortunately. It was probably 7 or 8 years ago now, but it's one of those stories that will always resonate with me. But you're quite right, it could have been a scary one. You never know what snake might end up in there, certainly. I had one slither across my chest once while I was lying in bed. Just I can't even remember what it was, but I think it was a spotted bush snake, but a very, very small one. But that gave me quite a fright. And I had a boomslang, the tree snake, the Afrikaans for tree snake is boomslang, tried to come through my window once while I was on the phone, but I managed to sort of usher the snake out before it actually came into the room. So it does happen, but it's all part and parcel, the enjoyment and the excitement of living in these wilderness areas. Milo, you like snakes and crocodiles? Well, I'm very, very happy to hear that. So a lot of people are very fearful of snakes and spiders and scorpions. If you actually dig into their physiology, their behavior, the way in which they live their lives, the adaptations they have, they are such remarkable creatures, and they all sort of fall under that same banner of very, very ancient animals that have been around for as long or longer than some of the dinosaurs in some cases. And they haven't changed very much because they are exceptionally good at what they do. Evolution only really happens if it's necessary. And so spiders and scorpions, two good examples, have been around for hundreds of millions of years and still look pretty much the same. They've got smaller, as is the case with most insects. Of course, remember back in sort of pre-dinosaur ages, there were dragonflies the size of eagles and larger flying around, lots of massive insects, but there was more oxygen in the atmosphere back then, which made it easier for insects to be able to utilize all of that oxygen for the power of flight and things. And as the oxygen levels dropped, they themselves became smaller. And of course, there was no great competition for them back then, no massive insect eating predators. But you also like black mambas. I also like mambas, Joanne. I think, again, they've got a horrific reputation. But there's a crook just behind the elephant's trunk. He was obviously getting splattered by the trunk and decided to move out of his way. So there's our crocodile. But no, always exciting when you see a mamba, but quite happy to just view one from a distance. Their reputation, say, a little unfair, but one has to be very respectful of the mamba and what it is capable of. One times silent assassin. See, these things scare me more than snakes do. That really is the ultimate predator. So you're asking how deep is this area with the water? I've never actually gone swimming in it, so I couldn't tell you. Obviously, the depth will change depending on rainfall and how much it is pumped, because this will be a pumped water hole. But you can see that that crocodile, I think, is basically pushing himself along on the ground with his feet. So in this instance, probably not more than about a foot or so of water. At its deepest point, it might sort of come up to your thighs, perhaps, but bear in mind it's very, very muddy substrate, and you would sink down probably into your shins at least because of all the mud there. You can see when the elephants wade through the water, they're sort of as they walk, their great weight sinking into that mud. The beautiful undulatory motion of the tail, but it's such a prehistoric looking creature, isn't it?
Explore the untamed valleys and thickets with Ralph Kirsten.
Beautiful.
Or venture into the wild with Eric Barnard.
I will take you to my favorite places, show you my favorite animals, share the best stories, and you'll definitely be able to watch the stars.
There are only 6 places available on each safari. For more information and to secure your seat, contact Wild Earth Travel.
taking advantage of some of this greenery being kept nice and nutritious from the surrounding water. Surprised you don't see elephants eating more often from places like this, but it's quite fibrous, that grass, so it's not the greatest fodder, despite the colour. I mean, it's quite fibrous, has to be very hardy to survive in these conditions. Without the elephant at the back, which just said, no, enough's enough. Jordania, you're wondering how often elephants step on crocodiles? A good question. I'm sure it's happened from time to time, but I would imagine that the crocodile is more than able to sense the sensory vibrations of such a massive animal moving towards it. The crocodile will just slink out of the way, I would think, but I wouldn't be surprised if it has happened once or twice. Yeah, very difficult to gauge how deep that water is. You can see even the elephant struggling a bit to pull his legs through that mud. In fact, that's more like sludge than water at the moment, I think. All sorts of interesting things living down there, though. The aquatic ecosystem will be pumping, even though we can't see it. So much of nature happens outside of our view. Water scorpions, freshwater crabs, all sorts of little arthropods living down there. And of course, that's what a lot of the wading birds that we see on the edge of these pans are looking for, little things living in that ecosystem. Pull those back legs out. Oh, you see the way he's just sinking into the mud there. And no, I haven't seen a young one in this area personally, but it's not an area that I get to visit all that often. I have seen baby crocodiles in other areas, certainly. I remember there was some at Chitwa Dam last year. We were quite often were seeing one or two there. They were probably about a foot in length or so. But I think for me, the most amazing thing about those young crocodiles is the fact that certainly for the first week or two, really struggling through the mud now, is the fact that they do get some parental care. Parental care in reptiles, of course, is very, very rare. Most of the time, eggs are deposited and just left to their own devices. But the way that the mother crocodile will actually assist youngsters in getting out of the egg, the young ones, when they're ready to hatch and start hatching, will sort of cheep, and mum will come and very, very gently help them escape the egg. A nice herd of eddies coming in now. And then they will sometimes carry them down to the water in their mouths and form a little creche where mum will protect them for the first week or so of their lives. The only other that I can think of off the top of my head example of parental care in reptiles, if you could even call it parental care, is with the python that we mentioned. So pythons will, after they've laid their eggs, actually sort of wrap around the eggs and form a sort of a nest and keep the eggs safe and warm in the middle. And they will come outside and they will bask in the sun and warm up almost to the point where they could give themselves a stroke. They warm up excessively and then come back and again wrap themselves around those eggs just to transfer some of the heat. And they also shake and shudder just to create metabolic heat. to assist in the development of those embryos. But generally speaking, in reptiles, very little to no parental care. Penelope Kenyon, many mambas around the north coast of KZN in the sugar canes. Yes, they do like those sugarcane fields. Well, it's just a good idea to be careful where you're walking. But this myth of mambas being faster than people is not true. You could outrun a mamba if you had to, but best defense with snakes is to stay still. They do key off movement, so try not to make any sudden movements. And so, more often than not, the snake will leave you alone. Also, you also get the green mambas down on the eastern coast of KZN. That's not one that I've ever seen. The black mamba, actually a very common snake, occurs in various regions around the country. Well, if you look carefully, you can actually see the body rising and falling. I'm wondering if that, I assume that is the crocodile breathing. Of course, they do breathe very, very slowly, and they can lower their heart rate under times of, well, not exactly, not under times of stress, but when they need to, when they are underwater for long periods of time, or if they start going into what we call estivation, when it's very, very hot and they're outside of the water and just sort of shutting down, that heart can beat only a few times a minute. Interesting to see the rising and falling of a crocodile's chest there. But he hasn't done it again, so whether that was just one breath or if he just had a bit of a stretch of the chest muscles there, I'm not sure, but interesting to see. Tracy, you're asking have I seen a crocodile going to another waterhole during the daytime? Um, I don't think I've ever bumped into one sort of plodding down the road, but I've certainly seen evidence of it. Mostly happens at night just to avoid those hotter temperatures. I remember on the Korongwe when I was working there, we would quite often see crocodile tracks on the road, and we had sort of one crocodile who seemed to do a loop between three water holes that were in quite close proximity to each other. So we used to sort of see his route, or I'm assuming his, it could have been a her, difficult to tell. But I don't think I've ever sort of bumped into one just walking down the road whilst driving around. More often than not, they will do it more at night as opposed to during the day, just from a safety perspective. But it would be amazing. Imagine driving around the corner and bumping into a crocodile walking down the road towards you. Not something you would expect. And Joanne Mello, yes, you like the way that the crocodiles produce bubbles. They do. They sort of shake and shimmer, the males do when they're attracting females and blow these little bubbles, all part of their rather elaborate courtship behavior. Very, very interesting to watch. I think I've seen it once or twice, but I've never been in sort of close enough proximity to really view it. But their whole body shakes. They do make some vocalizations, yeah, blowing little bubbles. But I suppose whatever the female crocodile wants, she apparently finds that quite the attractive mating game. But yeah, weird and wonderful well, not breeding strategies, but these breeding, what's the word I want? Um, I'm having a mental block. But the things that animals do in order to attract a mate. We don't really think of crocodiles as being romantics, but why not? You do get some lovely other displays that are done by males. Spiders springs to mind, and often we see it in birds as well, with bringing little food parcels. So a lot of spiders, a lot of birds will do that. The jumping spiders are one of my favourites, particularly when two jumping spiders meet. They'll do little dances, and despite the fact that there are so many different species of jumping spider, each one will have a dance unique to its own species. So when two jumping spiders meet, they'll do this little dance, wave their pedipalps, which are like their ninth and tenth legs, if you like, around, and that serves as an identification feature, and also again something that the ladies find very attractive, not just in humans, where dancing skills have their benefits, something that I'm sadly not blessed with. I'm getting quite a lot of vicarious enjoyment from these two elephants. They're thoroughly enjoying themselves in the mud. And we've got some little ones struggling through the mud up there as well. How cute. Not quite sure whether that little one keeps falling over or whether he's doing it on purpose and just enjoying the mud. But this one at the front is having an absolute blast. Look at that. Completely coated.
We have an exciting announcement. Wild Earth is launching a YouTube membership program. For a nominal monthly fee, members get an ad-free channel, prioritized questions, early access to videos, and many more perks. You'll get fun features like badges and emojis that'll make you stand out in the chat. YouTube memberships will help us to continue with our mission of connecting people with nature while giving you access to lots of our amazing content.
See, Joanne Miller saying you watched a show about the golden orb spiders and their sort of mating habits, but that and yes, how pretty they are and very large. You do get some massive ones around about April, May. I remember a couple of years ago there was a massive influx of golden orb spiders. They were everywhere. We're seeing sort of four, five, six huge webs on every tree you drove past. They were everywhere. And those females can get huge, not too dissimilar to the sort of size of your hand. And yeah, massive difference between males and females, which is normal in spiders, but particularly obvious within the orb spider group. Females being 50, 80 times bigger than the males. They're not much bigger sort of than the last section of your thumb, whereas the females can be the size of your palm, if not bigger. And again, if I stand to be corrected, but from of the what we would call the golden orb spiders or the banded-legged nephilas, to give them their proper name, there the male will bring a little food parcel, and while the female is busy eating, he will try and quickly get in and do his mating, because if he doesn't, there's a chance he'll get eaten, which is unfortunate. But sometimes it does happen. Well, it happens quite regularly, but it's a good meal for the female. It helps with the development of the eggs. The nice thing or the clever thing with females spiders is that they almost have like a built-in refrigerator unit, and they can store sperm for many, many months and mate with multiple males and then choose which sperm packet or spermatophore would be the correct word to use that they're going to use to fertilize their eggs. Look at this youngster, how cute. Perfect little scratching post. Oh, no, getting up was too difficult. Got a little bit irritated, I think. Is that not just joyous? I guarantee all of you are smiling at the moment, even if you don't realize it. Come back, got left behind. That's made my day. They're just so much joy to be had, particularly baby elephants. They're just such emotive things. Look at him. Or her. I didn't even think to have a look if it was a he or a her. That's one happy elephant. This youngster's chasing somebody. Everybody's got a little bit of spring in their step after their little bath. I saw one at Juma Waterhole, a young bull spray water at a heron once. Spectacular. Back to our spider discussion, though, Joanne. Yes, so those orb spiders they can make with multiple males and then store those little sperm packets for use at a later date. Um, but males do have a way around that. So if anyone is unaware of how spiders actually mate, what they do is the males produce what we call a spermatophore, which is a little parcel of sperm. He spins a little web, deposits this little parcel of sperm there, and actually then what I know is his pedipalps, which are, if you like, the ninth and the 10th leg, or that's what they look like, spider antennae, the equivalent thereof. Those are actually modified sexual organs. It's one of the ways that you can tell the difference between a male and a female spider, even if you find one in your house. It's universal across the whole spider group. Males look as if they've got little boxing gloves on, so they have these sort of bulbous tips to those pedipalps. And the male actually sort of puts that into the spermatophore. The sperm is transferred into that pedipalp, and then that is what is used for mating. And in many species of spiders, when or during that transferring of the spermatophore into the female, the male will actually snap off that organ and plug the hole to stop any other males from being able to deposit their sperm into it. So it, in effect, renders that male unable to mate again because he has broken off his sort of secondary sexual organ, but it is worth the sacrifice to ensure that no other males can get in there and undo the good work that you have done. An extreme measure, but one that is deemed necessary by spiders in many cases. I'm sure this will be one of the young bulls left behind, beginning that sort of detachment process from the herd as he gets maturer and maturer, often just loitering at the back of the group. And always stay in the vicinity, but over the next few years, we'll start that sort of migratory process away from its natal herd, become more independent, may meet up with another group of young males until he gets big enough and strong enough to do his own mating game. Bill, you're amazed that they often they don't get stuck in the mud. I am too, because I can assure you, if you or I tried to walk through that waterhole, we would get stuck. We would lose shoes. We'd probably need our friends to help pull us out because that's really properly sludgy mud. But don't forget, elephants have pretty big muscles and they're able to lever themselves through that mud. I remember we were discussing last time I was on the unfortunate demise of things like warthogs and inyalas that get stuck in the mud when they have to wade through the muddy area actually to get to the water during the drier months. And it does happen, but it doesn't really isn't really problematic for an adult elephant. They have the musculature to be able to pull themselves loose from that very sticky, suctiony mud. But a young elephant could indeed get stuck there and does sometimes need to be helped by the members of the herd. But that's the benefit of a very close knit social structure of elephants. If it was to happen, then the little one lets out a distress call, and not only mum, but all the members of the herd will come to his aid and they will push and pull and shove until the little one is freed. Beautiful group of blue wildebeest applying indirect sunlight as they often do. This makes me wonder why they don't rather just find a little bit of shade. But it's nice to be out in the open. You've got far better view of any predators sleeping up on you, creeping up on you. I don't see any big dominant bulls here at the moment. We may be in there somewhere. As a general rule of thumb, if you can't see the most obvious part, one of the ways that you can attempt to sex a wildebeest will be by looking at the horns. You see the horns come out a little bit like handles on a racing bike, curving up. Then normally for the females, that curve up will happen before the edge of the ears. Males have a heavier set of horns, and their horns will often go out horizontally before turning up. And when they turn up, it will be beyond the extent of the ears. That's sort of a general rule of thumb, as well as being more heavily set and much larger. If you see them standing next to a female, probably another sort of 30 centimeters or so at the shoulder at least, the big dominant bull. A giant bunny, a baby elephant today keeps the doctor away. Absolutely. Well, hopefully he'll help my cold. Again, apologies for the occasional snivel that you might be hearing, but yeah, maybe the endorphins that have been released from the delight of watching little baby elephants frolic will help my ailment. I'm sure I'll survive. But it does really incite just such happiness. Everybody smiles at baby elephants.
This is On Safari. Like being in one of those eye level hides. If you've ever been into, or if you haven't ever been to one of the eye level hides that you can find at some waterholes in lodges, it's a really amazing experience. And sometimes you get exactly that, elephants walking past you from a meter away.
it's some incredible views that you would, if you saw them that close, you probably did something wrong if you weren't in that situation. But it gives you a chance to really examine all the details of the skin. You may have seen them when the trunk flashed past the camera, all of those sensory hairs, and just seeing those little details that you would sometimes miss from a distance. Jive Bunny, you're saying you've seen Ezzelwini here in the past. For those of you who don't know, Ezzelwini is one of the very large tusked elephants. We used to see quite often at pridelands. And of course, male elephants can roam over very, very large distances. As the crow flies, um, I'm trying to think, as the crow flies from Pridelands to Cat Eye Pan here, Oliphants West is not actually that far, probably not more than 10 or 15 kilometers, so I can certainly believe that he's been seen there. I never actually did a stint at Prideland, so I've never actually seen Ezzelwini firsthand. I have seen a few very large tuskers in my time, sort of in the Kruger area, but haven't seen the fabled Ezzelwini, but very much a gentle giant from what I know. Soul of nature, was that elephant or a dinosaur? A very good question, that close up. Looked like a sort of a diplodocus or a brachiosaur strolling past the camera a little bit earlier. And Mercedes mean you're very happy to see lots of elephants. It is, they are, we say it all the time, and I always feel bad about just repeating myself, but they're just so much fun to watch, elephants. They're just always doing something. Lions, amazing, but do sleep a lot. Don't do a great deal. Great if they're moving around or hunting or feeding. Most of the time they're sleeping, but elephants constantly doing something, interacting with each other, youngsters rolling around and frolicking, spraying water. They're just such entertaining animals. They're like, I don't know, there's just always something going on. It doesn't matter where you look, you find something happening. relaxing scene. There's lots of flapping of ears, nobody moving with any great speed, everybody doing everything very, very slowly, even these ones having a drink, not really drinking, but safe in the knowledge that they could if they wanted to. Just saw that young bull at the front here have a drink. There we go. So remember, with elephants, they can hold, well, depends on the size of the elephants, and of course it does seem to vary the more you read, but around about 8 to 10 litres of water potentially that could be sucked up into that trunk and then squirted into the mouth. And don't forget, of course, elephants have something called a pharyngeal pharyngeal pouch down their throat, which is almost like a little storage device for water that they may be able to dip into from time to time under extreme stresses. That can potentially hold another sort of litre of water in reserve, almost like we call it a bursa, is another word for it, which we generally sort of use that term when discussing tortoises and other chelonians. So that's often used by the females during the time when they're laying their eggs, and they will. Yes, great walk by here. Are you going to come and investigate us? Possibly. Oh, examining that little patch of urine down there, getting all the information. We should see him put his tusk into his mouth now. Sorry, his trunk. There we go. Just touching that urine with the tip of his trunk and then placing the tip of that trunk into the Jacobson's organ on the roof of his mouth and just getting all that sensory information from whoever it was that left that deposit. Amazing views. Yeah, so that bursa sac. Not sure what that noise was. That bursa sac that we often talk about in tortoises. If you've ever picked up a tortoise, which we really don't recommend you do, particularly in winter, and they were to sort of defecate on you, they release that sort of green fluid. That's fluid out potentially from the bursa sac as well. That's a storage of water that helps them from getting dehydrated. When the females do lay their eggs, the ground is often very, very dry and hard, so they will release the contents of that bursa sac just to wet the top of the soil to allow them to dig down underneath that crust in order to then lay their eggs in a hole and cover them back up. Quinton, do elephant calves ever get left behind by the herd? Well, unfortunately, it does happen, but very, very, very occasionally. Perhaps if the herd was being incredibly stressed, maybe being chased around by something or by human influence is also another possibility. But sometimes, but very, very occasionally only, thankfully, calves can get left behind. And if they do, it's not a good thing for them, certainly, because they are so reliant upon their mothers for a long period of time. That being said, elephant adoption does happen. If another female was to find an abandoned youngster or one that's been separated, they will sometimes take them in and look after them best they can. It's a very, very nice society, the elephants, but they're such a close-knit community that very, very rarely will one get left behind. So yeah, good question. Does the size of an elephant depend on where it is located? I assume you mean geographically. To an extent, well, yes and no. There's never a straight answer to any of these nature-based questions, unfortunately. Remember, a lot of it is genetics, and generally speaking, genetics will stay in a particular area. So if you've got a really large cow and bull that mate and they produce a really large offspring, then the chances are that bull isn't going to stray too far afield from where he was born. Yes, they roam over large areas, but still within potentially the Kruger National Park or the frontier, the Transfrontier Park, in the surrounding countries as well. In my experience as well, you often find that animals in drier areas do get a little bit bigger, which may sound counterintuitive, but that's actually a good way of dealing with the heat. The bigger you are, the more surface area you have, then the better the ratio is between surface area and volume. So if you're particularly large, you have an awful lot of volume and a relatively small surface area, which helps. The standard sort of explanation for that would be, for example, if you had three cubes of water of different sizes, a small cube, a medium cube, and a large cube, and then the largest of those cubes will contain the biggest volume of water and heat up the slowest in the sun because there's more stuff inside the cube than there is to surface area. So you'll often find that larger animals are found in very hot areas and hot environments. So some of the elephants you find in Namibia, for example, in very dry, hot areas are very, very large. I think the largest one ever discovered, I think, is up in Tanzania. There's a lot of big genetics of large elephants up in East Africa as well. I think it's 11 tons, if my memory serves me correct, which is pretty massive. We normally go on the fact that a big bull gets to about 7 tons. But again, we don't weigh them all. Not an easy thing to do. So it's only really if there's some research being done on them, or if it's been darted or collared, where it might get weighed to know for sure. Otherwise, it's a lot of estimations. I was finding Kruger, particularly if you want to go and look for big elephants, you go further north. I've seen big ones in the south as well, but I've seen more large elephants further north. But there's a lot of elephants in the northern part of Kruger.
Explore the untamed valleys and thickets with Ralph Kirsten.
Beautiful.
Or venture into the wild with Eric Barnard.
I will take you to my favorite places, show you my favorite animals, share the best stories, and you'll definitely be able to watch the stars.
There are only 6 places available on each safari. For more information and to secure your seat, contact Wild Earth Travel.
bothered her. Hello, big boy. It's a lion. Is that a lion? I think that's a lion. Well, there we go. That's why she suddenly reacted. Everybody put their trunks up. I was saying the other day that it's amazing or it's a shame we don't see any cats coming down for a drink. Well, I think we've been denied by the fact that there's some elephants there. Everybody seemed relatively relaxed considering it, but the big male decided to come over and just flex his muscles and chase. I think I saw two lionesses there. You can just see one moving off into the distance at the back left there. I think there was a second one as well, but how cool was that, everybody? Well, as I said, you never know what you're going to see. But interesting, we noticed the difference in the elephant behavior, and that's why. So you're lying up in that shade waiting for a chance. Well, maybe if those elephants move on, we will be able to get a glimpse of those lions coming down for a drink. But how cool is that? Hot, chuffed. I'm actually surprised that there wasn't more disturbance, but you could see that female, she'd suddenly become very much more aware. Ears were out, head was up, sniffing. And you could almost see she just looked a little bit uncomfortable and was shifting around as if deciding what she was going to do next. But maybe she felt relatively safe with the fact that the big bull had decided to go over there and take care of business. But often you'll find sort of trumpeting, and the lions will literally be chased out of the way, out of the area there. But I don't think anyone was too worried today. Just because it's daylight, of course, lions generally far more feared during the nighttime hours. If this was nighttime, I'm sure there would have been a far bigger reaction. But that was very cool. Robert, you're asking how elephants prevent incest within the herd. Well, that's a very good question, but nature generally takes that into account. So, as we were saying earlier, when we were looking at that young elephant bull up at Tau, um, that was when we saw him sort of loitering at the back of the group. That's what normally happens. There's a sort of, it's the nature nurture debate, but instinctively, genetically, almost always in male animals, the male will migrate away from the herd when sexual maturity is reached, and that just helps to avoid inbreeding. Of course, sometimes it's not impossible that a male might come back to the same herd when it must, but the females are also very much aware of this, and that even if a male doesn't leave, he will be chased away by the matriarch or other mature members of the group to avoid this. And if a young male was to come back and try his luck, he probably wouldn't get very far, to be honest. And the females would take matters into their own hand and they would deny him the opportunity. So a lot of it is just sort of genetic knowledge to not do it. It'll all be contained within the sense. We saw that one big bull having a sniff of the urine and the dung here and analyzing it. And remember, elephants are incredibly clever. We know this. They can recognize hundreds of individuals by scent alone. And there's just a sort of an alarm bell that goes off in the brain that says this one is not an opportunity for me. I don't know if it has ever happened in elephants. It probably has done. I know it has happened in lions, for example, before. But nature's pretty good, even if a breeding event was to happen in between two related individuals. More often than not, it would be an unsuccessful pregnancy. Cool. That bull was not particularly welcome. Well, thank you, Lady Macbeth. I say well spotted, guide eyes. Well, I'm glad to see they're still there. They may be a little bit rusty these days, but yeah, I certainly wasn't expecting to see that. But it was very interesting to see the dynamic. As I said, I saw that cow's behavior change. She suddenly looked a little bit more alert, trunk up, sniffing something. But I wasn't necessarily expecting one of the bulls to just sort of wander over there and go and police the situation. It was quite interesting to see. I would have expected the matriarch or one of the mothers to have been a little bit more vocal or a little bit more upset by the presence of those lions and to actually do the chasing themselves. But I suppose if you've got a much bigger, heavier, and dare I say, expendable male within the group, then why not send him? It will be very interesting to see whether or not, when and if these elephants move off, whether those lions do come down for a drink. I can't imagine they've gone very far. They're probably just laid up in the shade under those acacia trees that we saw. Let's give this thing a go. Mum's leg as good a spot as any to have a bit of a head scratch. Also, just said thank you very much to Tulu, who was in Johannesburg chatting to me, telling us what's happening, and to welcome Nadine, who's come to join us. Who needs a scratching post when you've got Mum's leg? Still very young, this one. I would think probably around about 6 months of age as a sort of a guess. You can see how furry he still is. The fact that it can still fit underneath Mum's belly without any problem says at least, well, definitely less than a year. That normally is fine up until the first year, but you can just see how much fluff he's still got. Look at the pink on the inside of the ears. It shows you just how thin those ears are, particularly at a young age. You often get asked how come they've got those rips and tears or how they get those rips and tears in their ears, but you can see how delicately thin, particularly at this young age, that skin is. So if look at that fluff. If he wants to get it stuck on a thorn or a little twig whilst running through the bushes, it'd be very easy to rip that skin, and that will stay potentially for the rest of his life and become a way in which to identify that individual elephant. Still pink behind the ears, yeah, less than 6 months, I reckon. Probably maybe more like 3 months. This one. What are you doing, little one? Scratching your own leg. It's going to fall over, I think. That's a little girl. Again, particularly with such a youngster. I mean, that is a very young elephant. I'm very surprised there wasn't more of a reaction when those lions wandered into the fray earlier. But it was quite a big group of elephants, I suppose. There was sort of, well, there must have been about 20 or so there, so safety in numbers to some extent, I suppose. It's certainly something from a guiding perspective you need to be very careful of. If elephants and lions do meet, it's a time to put a little bit of space between the action because anything can happen. Those elephants can start chasing things and get very, very upset. spot there. One that does keep its leaves throughout all of the year. So it creates a nice shade and a little guarri bush, those magic guarris surrounding it. That will be the perfect place for the lions to be lying up, waiting for their chance to come down and have a drink. As always, the best way to potentially find the predators is to watch the other animals' reactions. So we all know that the antelope species give off alarm calls, giraffes will stare, most animals' behavior will change if they are aware of a potential predator. It's going to be very, very difficult to spot from here, even in the grass. Of course, we've got that beautiful tan coat of a lion is designed perfectly or has evolved perfectly for this dry brown grass that is very, very frequent during the winter months, which is, of course, the best hunting opportunities for lions because other animals, the herbivorous animals, are not getting as much food as they could do. It's the wrong time of year, there's not as much nutrition around. Those other animals, it's the one still scratching. Other animals perhaps not in as good a condition as they would normally be during the summer months because the food is of lower quality. They're under water stress, they have to take unnecessary risks to come down and drink. And with that low browning vegetation, it is potentially more difficult for lions to find shelter. But when you're the same colour as dry grass, you have the perfect camouflage. Arena, Arena Kalinin, good morning to you too. I'm glad you could join us. I thought we were about to see a solar eclipse then. Spas, you're asking how do baby elephants suckle from mum? Well, they have their mammary glands under their front legs or behind their front leg. In fact, there they are. You can see them quite clearly in the shot here. And well, obviously they don't use their trunks. So when the baby elephant, you may even see it, you never know. When the baby elephant comes up towards the mother, it sort of folds the trunk up over the head and out the way and will just suckle milk straight from the mouth. So they don't use their trunks to suckle at all. Well, that's a pretty close-up view of elephants. The temporal glands of this cow here. Look at those long, long eyelashes. Not the sight you want to see if you're not on a camera. Look at that granular skin. Spectacular. You can see that secretion behind the eye. That's the temporal gland that we more normally associate with a elephant bull that is in must, in that reproductive state. But female elephants, elephant cows, also have those temporal glands as well. It's nothing to do with with reproductive status as is, but it is a release of hormones. That's the way we generally, I always describe it as it shows a state of heightened emotion. So possibly because of the presence of those lions, maybe just because she's happy, maybe she's sad. We don't really know exactly why, but you'll often find Elephant cows will also exhibit that temporal gland secretion, and it comes on really, really quickly. If an elephant suddenly gets a fright and there is a stressful situation, you'll find all the cows will suddenly start to ooze that temperine fluid from those temporal glands. Quick check to see whether there is any sign of those lions. Don't know if I've ever wanted elephants to move away from a waterhole so much, just to see for the first time that I've ever done live at the waterhole, we might actually get live views of some lions coming down to drink, which would be pretty amazing. Not that I'm complaining. These incredible close-up shots we're getting of these ellies. Look at those eyes. So much life, so knowledge, experience in there. See a bit of sort of weeping from the eye as well. So they're not tear ducts like you and I have. It's something called a Hoderian gland that just lubricates the eye. And you sometimes, particularly in the winter, you'll find little flies and little moths and butterflies that will actually sort of flutter around the eyes of the elephant. It's like something out of a Disney movie. But they're also after that moisture, the same way you often find bees buzzing around taps and things in Africa during the winter, because everything is desperate for water and anything will do, even the secretions of an animal. You often find great sort of swarms of butterflies loitering around puddles as well. Water attracts everything. We've had some incredible close encounters today and some beautiful moments with little tiny youngsters as well. But come on, elephants, I think that's enough now. You've had a good drink for like 45 minutes or so. Let the lions come and have a drink. I think this little one really is stealing the show, though. Dave in Detroit is saying she really is itchy. Yeah, exceptionally itchy, but there's a lot of dust this time of year, so I'm not surprised. And yeah, sometimes you've got to have a good scratch. And so when you've got a mobile scratching post that follows you round all the time, then why not take advantage of it, I say? Oh, getting her feet wet. So cute. Be a little bit careful. There's an awful lot of big legs to dodge under there, but Mum is very, very attentive. She'll know exactly where her little one is. That's one of the reasons why constantly sort of touching her legs as well, just so she knows exactly where she is, not in any danger of getting trampled. So it's something I've oops, losing his footing and legs on the ice. So nice thing you see with buffalo as well, for example. If you see buffalo calves drinking, they drink from in between the back legs, so they get in underneath the tail, which does lead to a rather unfortunate deposit every now and again on the forehead. But you do find that in buffalo, particularly because they are herd animals and they are liable to stampede, if the young one was drinking from the mammary glands from just inside the back legs, if the calf had its head in front of the back legs to drink, and if suddenly the herd took off for some reason, there'd be a very, very good chance that calf would be trampled in the maelstrom. So it's one of the reasons you see buffalo feeding calves drinking from underneath mum's tail. It's just an adaptation for a big herd animal. If they all start running, that mum will just run and the baby will just be left there going, "Huh, what happened?" and run off. Look at the little pink feet. Oh, she's trying to have a drink there. Of course, she won't have the control. Won't have the control to be able to suck up water in the trunk and get it into the mouth yet. Potentially just trying to copy the elders by having a drink. But just really drinking milk at this age, won't be eating any solid food. Sandy Franklin, you're also loving the baby elephants. They've really stolen the show today between this one and the one at Tao, who I'm still chuckling at, running around on the banks there. It's definitely been an elephant day. She's got ants in her pants. I mean, she's just non-stop. She's going to have a good rest and a good lie. Whoop! But it's more slippery than it looks. She's like, no, okay, I'm going to go somewhere else now. Oh, I haven't seen anything this cute for a while. Well, I wonder if that was Mum saying, right, cut it out. Enough. Behave. Marina Callanan, it is too beautiful, so beautiful to see. It is really special, isn't it? The innocence of nature.
Explore the untamed valleys and thickets with Ralph Kirsten.
Beautiful.
Or venture into the wild with Eric Barnard.
I will take you to my favorite places, show you my favorite animals, share the best stories, and you'll definitely be able to watch the stars.
There are only 6 places available on each safari. For more information and to secure your seat, contact Wild Earth Travel.
Very difficult to know for sure, but very, very young. Those little pink feet, pink ears, could even be as little as 1 month. Helping this little one that Mum's standing in the water. It's making it slightly higher. She can barely reach up to the mammary gland for a drink. So yeah, a little flurry of movement there. So worth checking just to see whether or not that was caused by anything coming along. Yeah, it was just Mum ushering things out the way so baby can get out of the water. That's how regrettably, I don't think those lions are going to come into view with all this activity here. I think that's the elephant moving past in the background, which is even closer to where we saw them. Hmm. I'm pretty sure they will have just lain up somewhere in that tree line there, waiting patiently for this group of elephants to move on. But they've very much taken up residence at this waterhole. They've been here for, I think, not far off an hour now. Having said earlier that elephants normally come to a waterhole, have a drink, and move on, of course, nature has a very sick sense of humour and just loves to. Oh, where are you off to? You're going to chase a lion for us? And just loves to show you up. Yeah, as soon as you say elephants have a drink and move, this herd stays hanging around for hours. Yeah, interesting. Now, are you just going for a wander, or are you going to antagonistically go and chase some cats for us? It would certainly be something I would expect for the elephants to seek out the lions and get rid of them out of the area. I'm surprised that we didn't have more of a reaction. There was no trumpeting, there was no chasing. It was just a sort of a slow approach, really, and everybody said, "Okay, we'll keep our distance and make some space." And that is the area that they were sort of headed towards, possibly a little bit left of that, but we don't know where they ended up. So there's a chance if that they are still there, they might get pushed further towards the left with that elephant walking through the bushes. It was really towards that apple leaf was the last time we saw them. for any movement, any flashes of movement through the grass. But there's something there. What's that? There is something moving at the back there that doesn't look like an elephant. That could be there. Well, no, is that the elephant now? Maybe that was his trunk. Not sure. There's something behind the trees there. Well, here comes the elephant. Well, if it was, it could be the elephant pushing the lions off towards the left. Well, there's a youngster there as well. Or is it just another herd coming in, perhaps? About where those elephants are now, that's about the last place I think that we saw the lions. They were heading in that direction. But with another group coming in, I would think they've probably made themselves scarce now. Interesting to see if we have any sort of greetings going on between the herd coming in and these ones here, particularly with a couple of youngsters. You'll often find that, say, there may be other herds that have split from each other. That, for example, two sisters might go off and form their own herds or go and join different herds. We do see that from time to time. And sometimes you do see sort of greeting ceremonies between herds. And perhaps that's the reason why that male wandered off. Maybe he recognized somebody, or certainly heard or saw those elephants coming in and went to go and investigate. Puma Konkala, you're saying elephant therapy is good for the soul. I could not agree with you more so than anything else out here. It's just so, I've said it a load of times already today, but it's just so relaxing sitting, watching a herd of elephants and watching them interactive. You just sort of find yourself exactly drifting off, but it's like your heart rate slows and everything just becomes better in life. Just find myself wanting to speak more slowly and deeply when discussing elephants. It just there's a sort of a lethargy about them, and it's something relaxing until they get angry, and then of course you have to wake up quite quickly. But just watching them go around their daily business is very interesting. So if we get any greetings between these two groups, it'd be interesting to see. Joanne Miller, you're welcome. I'm glad you've been enjoying everything. And you're quite right. You've just reminded me that, of course, it is Saturday. Well, that explains why we got a brief view of some lions.
did have some lines. Cedric's probably going to follow that one.
We are down to the last 5 minutes or so of today's live at the Waterhole, but it has been an absolutely epic afternoon. It's one of my favourite ones that I've done, I think. It's been mostly about elephants. I'm trying to decide, as I normally do around this time, my highlights. I'd love to hear yours as well. I think, despite some of the cool things we saw, I really enjoyed the way we saw that crocodile sort of undulating through the water. He just looks so prehistoric. I don't know why that one resonates with me, but I enjoyed that. That little youngster running around and having a good roll around at Tau. Obviously, to see the lions was amazing, even if it was only brief, and to watch the little interaction that we had there with the elephants is very special, not something that I've seen before. But I think star of the show is down there, hiding under Mum. That little young female elephant, she has been an absolute treat today. She has made me grin from ear to ear. My cheeks are sore from just smiling rather stupidly at her. But it reminds me why I love what I do, just to get to see see little things like this and these little moments. They really do live with you forever. Look how fluffy she still is. I think all her antics early on, it's just too much now. We've got to have her lie down in the shade. Yeah. Still trying to have a drink. Covered in grass, sticking to her fur. She's like a little piece of Velcro. she's somewhere in that forest of legs now. Cheetahs and other animals are saying this has been an elephantastic show. It most certainly, I can't speak either, most certainly has. We've had some incredible close-ups as well. I mean, we've really seen some intricate details of the skins, of the eyes, the eyelashes, those temporal glands. Again, there's something very interesting on the floor here. Obviously, somebody's deposited something. Quite a few elephants have stopped and analysed the urine and the dung in this spot here. It's about the third or fourth bull that we've seen come and give it a good look, touch it with the trunk, and then pop it into the mouth to analyse that scent with the organ of Jacobson. We are unfortunately rapidly running out of time, only about 90 seconds to go, but it's been an absolute honour to share the last 2 hours with everybody. I know we've had viewers from the UK, from the US, from the Philippines, and I'm sure many, many other countries. It always amazes me to think how many people are watching these feeds and how many people get to enjoy these incredible images. But don't forget, it's not over yet. Straight after this, you can carry on watching some lovely images, and then, of course, we've got the sunset safaris from our other locations coming out in not too distant future as well. So please do stay on board for that. But yeah, it's been an absolutely epic day. Highlight for me, definitely that little baby elephant, and what a treat to see my first lions live at the waterhole. But I hope you'll be able to join us for the rest of the content coming your way. Otherwise, I will be here again tomorrow from 12:30 until 1:30. Sorry, 12:30 until 2:30 Central African time, and I look forward to chatting to you all again soon. Wherever you are, have a fabulous day, and I hope you've enjoyed today as much as I have.
Well, a very good afternoon to everybody. Thank you so much for joining us once again for our highlight show. We are coming directly from Juma Private Game Reserve here in the northern Sabi Sands. My name is Cedric, and behind the camera with me, we've got Muscles and Paul. So in the next half an hour, of course, we're going to discuss exactly what's been happening in the last 24